Well, hello and welcome everyone to day 3, our daily debrief of the EMS Leadership Summit. Thanks for joining us. My name is Robbie McHugh.
Hi, I'm Lisa Geritzi, and we are thrilled to have you with us. And we have an exciting panel of guests with us from the presentations today, and we are eager to get started. But as I've said, I think every evening this week, I love this part of the summit because it's so great to get to have live interaction, not only with our speakers, but from the folks who are watching. So for those of you who are watching us over the many platforms that we're streaming, please feel free to type in your questions. And we actually have a few questions that we got via email earlier, so hopefully we'll be able to get to those too.
Lisa, we're halfway through this week. It's hard to believe, but folks, there are still at least about 14 more hours to watch day 3 number sessions. So the day is not over yet. And again, we have 2 full days after that worth of content to cover. And it's been great to see this through line happening through all these presentations about flourishing together, that it is certainly possible to focus more on what we want more of, as opposed to constantly being, dragged down by all the problems that we face in our daily
Yeah.
lives in our organizations.
Yeah, and the second part of that too, like to leadership practices to unite and inspire, right? Because that's what flourishing looks like, is as a leader, the ability to bring people together to not only have people on the same page, but feel inspired and back in touch with why they wanted to be in EMS in the first place. And so hopefully people are taking away a lot of good strategies. I know last night Chris Cebollero shared with us he had 7 pages of notes just from yesterday's presentations. And frankly, I've been watching a number of the presentations, and any one of them, you can get so much value and so many ideas for how to make a difference. It doesn't have to take years and years. It's something you can change. You can shift your perspective. You can alter one conversation, and it might just have a ripple effect. So I think before we go any further, it's a great idea for us to thank our sponsors, because without them, this would not be a free summit, that's for sure. And we have our fantastic exhibitor booth, thanks to Robbie and his team who put this together every year. They're interactive booths. They're not just logos. Just like when you go to a in-person conference, you get to go to the vendor booths and get free gifts and interact with people. Well, you can do the same thing here, right, Robbie?
Absolutely. Let's check out one of our first booths here, before operational stress, and what they have to offer. They've put together resources here for preparing your workforce, your team, before they encounter the inevitable operational stressors of this job. And Dr. Megan McLaren is with us tonight in our panel. She's in our green room. She recorded an entire presentation for us about how do we as leaders really help our providers ahead of time. And her company has done so much research behind, so evidence-based research here about strategies and tactics to help prepare our people. So we appreciate them. And they're doing a grand prize giveaway drawing. So you can visit their booth and sign up here. And we're going to do a spin to win wheel on Saturday's daily debrief. So make sure you have a chance to visit the booth, sign up below here. And we appreciate the Before Operational Stress team for supporting the summit.
Another one of our sponsors is Northwell Health, number 15. Not sure why, Robbie, they're not opening up.
Okay.
But Northwell Health also has done quite a bit of research, and they have, what did you say, 12 different papers here. They're all open source, the research that the team has been doing. And we have Molly's presentation because it's such an important conversation. We have it live all week. So this is one of the presentations that isn't in the 24-hour window
Yes.
of viewing. You can watch it all week long.
Dr. Molly McCann Pino and her research team at the Northwell Health Center for EMS has been working since 2015 in the area of pre-hospital research, and recently the recording is about elevating the voices of women in EMS, and not only the quantitative results of what's happening in our workforce, but the qualitative stories and the peer-reviewed research. All of these can be tools in order to advocate for more resources. And again, it goes beyond just, you might be your good idea, but if you have evidence-based research to back it up, that's going to go a lot further. So we certainly appreciate the Northwell Health for sharing all of these different research papers and allowing us to feature that presentation all week.
Yeah. How about Phase International, another one of our sponsors, returning sponsor. Phase was formerly known as
The
Vendor Lift, which anyone who has had their hands on the Vendor Lift are excited because it puts handles on humans. I love that tagline. But they've actually rebranded because they are really interested in patient handling and safety for not only the patient, but for the providers. And so they have in their booth a free training. It's about 90 minutes, is that right? It's a really
Yes.
incredibly packed free training. It's not simply about products. It's really about the mechanics of lifting and moving people and their commitment to saving people's careers, really, by not having these injuries and back problems and things like that. So definitely go over to that booth, and there's an opportunity for a free trial of the
Vendor
I'm
Lift.
sorry, Vendor Lift.
Yes.
It just went right out of my head as it was coming out of my mouth. I hate when that happens.
As well as
Um,
the Menger Elk device, which is being used in the UK, I believe, on every ambulance. Another tool in order to put these airbags under patients, battery-powered device, and inflate these airbags to provide a much better lifting experience and save people's backs. So they
yeah,
are offering free field trials of both, and we so appreciate them for their continued support. I want to mention,
ninth grade. Oh no,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. First, the Honorable But Broken EMS in Crisis. We premiered their session today, their live stream today. There's one more opportunity where folks can, with a $15 donation, buy a ticket to the virtual live stream, the live premiere, if you haven't had a chance to make a local showing in your area. And this is a great advocacy tool that can be used to educate the public and elected officials. So if you haven't yet seen it, you can get your ticket here for a $15 donation, or if you've upgraded to an all access pass to the summit, you've already got a ticket. So be sure to check that out. We have one more showing Saturday evening, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Today it was exciting to have over 60 people, 60 advocates in the room, all watching this many watching this for the first time and sharing how moving and how well produced this documentary film really is. So great discussion today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And having Bryony there to answer questions was really great too. Ninth Brain, another returning sponsor, great tool here. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you have a lot going on in your organization as a leader, and who doesn't, check out Ninth Brain because they have simplified solutions for really streamlining a lot of the activities that you have to do. And there's so much available. And what you can do in their booth is not only watch their terrific video and read about them, but you can sign up to talk to Bradley Hughes, who's a terrific guy, and find out if this is a solution for your organization to really streamline things and just give you more time because all these things are talking to each other.
Absolutely. Well, Lisa, let's go back to our panel. We've got a panel waiting in the green room, and we were going to have probably two panels tonight, given the amount of guests that we have.
Yeah, we'll come back to some of the other sponsors after, but I do want to just mention Fire Rescue TV is our media sponsor this year again, and we thank them for that. And we are live streaming to about 400 or 500 um, firehouses and EMS squads around the country through their digital TV service. So hello, hello, hello.
Well, let's go ahead and bring in our first panel here. We lovingly call them the public relations panel and expert because they take their show on the road and they take it on virtually, and they've really come back every year to talk about their expertise in communication and public relations, how we can leverage messaging both internally and externally. And first up, we will bring in Rob Lawrence. Rob, welcome.
Hello,
Hey,
good
Rob.
afternoon from the left coast.
So happy you could be with us.
And
Mark.
from the East Coast, we've got Mark Tenia. Mark, welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
And Alexia Jobson from Remsa Health. Alexia, welcome. And we'll wait if
Hey, Alexia.
gonna. There we go.
There she is.
Hello, thanks for having me. So glad to be here.
Well, welcome.
Before
Thanks
we-
again. Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Well, I just wanted to, Rob sent us a note and said to ask him about being the chief in the UK and the Elks on every truck. So we want to give you a chance to say that.
I mean,
talk about that real quick.
I heard you say this yesterday, Robbie, and I'm like, yes, absolutely, because I can't believe now it's 15 years ago since I emigrated to the United States. I was a chief in the UK. And you're right, the HSE, the Health and Safety Executive, came down very hard on organizations that didn't look after providers, better back care, musculoskeletal injuries being the major cause of damage to providers. NPDS code 17 falls with the biggest category of call, certainly in most services in the UK, and therefore having the appropriate equipment was the thing. And therefore every ambulance in my service had the Mangar Elk. I was delighted to see that here. And sort of linking forward to Richmond, I emigrated 15 years ago, as I say. One of the first things I did was to look at what was on the trucks in the US and realized we didn't have the appropriate manual handling and lifting equipment, and immediately went and got Elks in to help the crews. And true story that one of the first outings for the Elk was a lady who probably didn't need to have that sophisticated level of lifting, but actually she was so impressed with the dignity with which we treated the patient. She came in, and we were a 501c3, right? So she came in and wrote a $10,000 check for just the way that we looked after her and treated her.
Wow.
And I seem to think we immediately went out and bought Canon bicycles for the bike team. But even so, that equipment saved a lot of backs, saved a lot of therefore cost, workman's compensation, and it's quite honestly the right thing to do. So I agree, Robbie. Every ambulance in the UK had something very, very similar.
It's good to hear that story. Good to hear how quickly it was adopted, and just the experiences. I know with that Binder lift device, when patients first started to feel like that difference, and I remember one case, they had been picked up many, many times, and I just happened to be there as a supervisor going in to ask, and they said, wow, that was so much more comfortable than it had been in the past. And if we can combine that with a device that just takes the strain off our own providers' back and increases the longevity of their career, I think
there's something to be said from the old-fashioned 1, 2, 3 hup, replaced by something that's elegant. And the word dignified was used to us a number of times in the way that we looked after the patient care, right? The word is care. And actually there was a lot of care used in elevating a patient back to the right angle, as it were.
Well, I want to bring one more guest in, Dr. Megan McLaren, because we want to talk about not only physical safety of our providers, but the emotional and the psychological safety of providers. So Megan, welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for what your presentation, what you put together, the talking about how do we help prepare our providers out there before they interact with those inevitable situations that are going to have a pretty lasting impact. So thank you for.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And one of the things I see, like the link here, as I was thinking about who was going to be on today, is, this presentation you did on public relations 101 is so much more than what a lot of people think it is. It was really about communication and how internal communication matters too. And then, you see that in relation to how stressed people feel or how they're able to communicate as a result of what they're experiencing. And I just see these two topics really interwoven.
I mean, I think, part of what, especially talking to leaders and thinking about where we're at and where we're headed, I really have adopted a perspective in the last number of years of, instead of thinking, why is someone doing that, and all of the perhaps HR policies and all the things that might trigger it. Instead, it's about thinking, what's going on for this person that may be contributing to why this is showing up for them. And I think that shift in just broadening our perspective to try to understand that there's, for our paramedics, there's so many things that are coming at them and really wearing away at their ability to cope. I think we sort of owe it to them to be a little bit more thoughtful as a community and as leaders around, are there other things that are getting in the way or contributing to ways they might be showing up in fashions that might not be really well understood.
Yeah.
Very
And I wonder
well said.
about the balancing of all of that information we saw with COVID, where things were changing almost every day or every week and policies were coming out. And Alexia, I know we've talked in the past about, at least hearing your presentations in the past, talking about that constant internal communication, and just curious to hear maybe how some of that has changed, or how has how have you maybe noticed the conversation changing to caring more for people's like emotional well-being in organizations?
Absolutely. I think it's essential that we consider our workforce as our top priority audience and group of stakeholders whenever we, think about it from a public relations perspective. That is, they are top ambassadors, or they have the potential to be. And if they're not feeling well, if they are feeling burnt out or unappreciated or, physically unwell, then we can't ask them to go out and take good care of their patients and represent our organization in a positive way. And so, one of the things that we have as an organization really tried to commit to is making sure that we communicate with our internal audiences first, and to share any kind of news, good or tough, or even things as small as some of our social media reels. We're really trying hard to get those posted internally first, so that our employees and providers feel like they are part of the organization before we share it externally, and so that they know that they are our top priority. So I think, in small ways like that, in larger ways internally, I know we're talking about different opportunities that we are looking at for investing maybe in meditation apps for our employees, or, increasing our gym allowance or things like that, to just really make sure that that they're being taken care of across the board.
With certainly, and especially with in the face of the American Ambulance Association's annual turnover report showing, I believe last year, nearly some agencies experienced as high as a 38% turnover rate. And I remember reading the direct cost of turnover we've referenced several times. That amount went up almost $2,000. So not only were turnover rates getting higher, we're also seeing the expenses get even more. So I feel like the conversation has shifted, where organizations are starting to pay more attention to the internal stakeholders they already have, the employees, so that they created an environment where people can grow, and rather than constantly, like we keep saying, recruiting people into a poor performing organization, or an organization that is designed to create a certain result, despite our best efforts sometimes.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think you mentioned the AAA survey, of course, and that's about recruitment and retention. The other element of that is being a good leader and great leadership. And if we think about the EMS One, What Paramedics Want survey that went out last year, I have to say, and forgive me for saying this, leadership got a bit of a kicking, to be honest. And some of the comments were eye-watering, but perhaps true. And so we have to combine the great leadership and the mentorship and the training that we're doing to bring on leaders, and also which in turn is the reason why people leave, right? It's not, I didn't leave because of the pay. I left because of the bad leadership or the perceived poor treatment I was receiving. And so they all go hand in hand.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, Gallup has year after year done surveys, and they have found that almost 1 in 2, I think it is, 50% of people consider leaving their job because of their direct supervisor. It's not necessarily, money or any of those other things. It's their direct supervisor, just like you're saying, Rob. That's so important, which is why we do this leadership summit to try to help leaders to be more effective at all these things, and to be able to offer it for free, thanks to our sponsors and all of our presenters, who we obviously couldn't do it without, but
And
that was our intention.
I think
Go
the flip
ahead,
side
Meg.
of that too is a good leader can bring so much of the best out of the people that they're leading. You know, if you've ever had the experience of someone who saw you and challenged you and inspired you, you know, like people want to leave it all on the field for someone like that. And I believe that, you know, there's absolutely work that needs to continue to be done. But I think that's what we need to keep our eye on is, you know, we can do some things. We're learning all the time about how to do some things to help organizations and help leaders create those conditions so that they're actually bringing the best out of people. And then, you know, that future where these honorable professions people are, you know, clamoring to get into again. Like I think that's possible for us.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Mark, you've been with us since day one. If I remember correctly, were you not one of the first, one of our first presenters in 2019?
I believe I had the honor of being one of the first to be here, and then I invited Rob and Alexia to join me the year after, and we've done it every year since.
And what are you seeing? Like, what are you noticing in terms of changes in communication, or what's needed from organizations in that regard?
Well, I'll say that coming into EMS and being the first public relations position to be in the Richmond Ambulance Authority and starting to present with people like Rob and Alexia on the national stage, I will say that in the past almost 6 years now, I've seen much more of a concentration on communication and public relations. And it's increased every year, not just with our organization, but on a national level as well. I think that as a whole in the industry, we're seeing more focus on the importance of communication and the value of communication. Because, you know, when you look at surveys, whether it's with your local agency or you're looking nationally, and you see some of the top issues facing leaders, communication is tied to so much of it. One of the things that we have done is try to listen to our employees and then implement things that they have suggested that we implement. But you can't just implement those things. You also have to communicate. We're implementing these things because of you all, because of the suggestions you had, because you can implement those things, but if they don't understand why, they may not feel like they're being heard. And so, you know, I've just seen a greater focus each year, both at our agency and both on the national scale of the importance of communication and making sure that we're putting more resources into it.
Absolutely. And folks, I know that two of our speakers have to leave shortly, Rob and Megan, and Alexia and Mark are going to stay with us for a little while. So Megan, any final thoughts for folks that are going to be maybe tuning in the next 12 hours to watch your session, what they can look forward to?
I think one of the big takeaways from the research and work we've been doing is like, I think there is hope for people to have that there are things that they can do to take care of themselves in the context of these incredibly important jobs that they're doing. And, you know, that there's things that leaders and organizations can do too. So, you know, I think shifting some mindsets, continuing to focus on the things that we can control, the things that are within our sphere of influence, and trying to take those things a piece at a time. I think it's important for people to really recognize those parts of their experience that they still can have some influence over. And frankly, the ability to form those connections with the people that they're working with and around is such a crucial part of that process.
Well, great. And thanks again for being with us tonight and putting your presentation together. I know you've got to run, so thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. This is wonderful. Take care, everyone.
And thank you for being a sponsor as well. That means a great deal to us, and we really appreciate your partnership.
Our pleasure. Take care.
And Rob, I know you've got to also go for your next meeting, but I appreciate you joining in for the first half of this. Any final thoughts from your position in the American Ambulance Association?
Yeah, well, I think that the key thing is we must continue to tell our story and tell our story well. And certainly for my part of our team session this year, I focused on some of the things you can do to bring journalists in to celebrate, you know, the achievements, whether it's a save, to talk about how to entertain the politician that's coming to your organization. We must do that. We must continue to do that in order to raise our profile, in order to get stuff done. This show, Robbie, is going out literally the week before we all go, or most of us go, to Washington, D.C., for NAMT's EMS on the Hill. Obviously, we're going to get in there, get in amongst our elected officials, and obviously to have stories to tell, to refer them back to the stuff that we're up to is in fact a key activity, because obviously we've talked about informing our staff, that internal communication, but also that external communication, showing the good jobs that we're doing is absolutely key, because by doing that, we can then get people on side, win friends and influence people. And of course, my favorite three-letter words, my favorite three words, all in favor, influence political decisions going forward. And so for me, certainly for my contribution in this year's summit has been to really get people to think about how to tell our story to those folk out there.
Well said.
It's so
Well
important. And that's been a theme every night of the daily debrief, is talking about, telling our story, having people really get what it's like, but also be advocates for us, and in the same way that they often are for police and fire. So thank you very much for your presentation, Rob.
Wonderful. And with that, I hope to see folk on the Hill next week if you're there in DC, and we hope to have some great state delegations. But for the moment, I'll see you all later.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Mark and Alexia, what else do you want to let people know about your session, and what it will make how it will make a difference for them in leadership or in their recruitment and retention efforts?
Well, I think some of what we've just been hearing is spot on, and I know that when I first started working in EMS, when I came to practice public relations in this particular profession, I ran into a lot of the times when I wanted to, highlight one of our clinicians or providers, or, in an email blast or on a social platform or with the news, and they're like, "Well, I was just doing my job," and I think that mentality is really consistent across all different EMS agencies around the country, and there is. It's truly humble. I believe that. And also we have to move past that. We have to be able to start, sharing our story unapologetically and saying, this is extraordinary work. And here are our accomplishments. And so, for example, just recently, and I know Mark has been doing a great job at this at Richmond for many years, we have just started putting together a monthly recap of an email blast that goes out to our elected officials and community stakeholders and influencers. And to be honest, we're just bragging about our organization's accomplishments and the contributions that our staff and providers make every day. And I think we have to just kind of embrace that we're going to brag a little bit and go forth and really tell our story, like you're saying, because we can't afford not to anymore. We can't afford to be humble any longer. So I think that's really key.
What a brilliant strategy to market to your messaging almost directly to those elected official offices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have a tough job. And for us to expect that they, understand exactly how compliance works or how response times work or, how a high performance system runs or anything like that is just, that what page is that in their, 500-page briefing book for that month or whatever. And so it's really our job to meet them where they are and distill the information into a way that's easy for them to digest and is important to them on behalf of their constituents.
I think this is a great example of leveraging strengths in an organization right there, right? Like drawing from your background in public relations, Mark, drawing from your background as somebody that was in media as an anchor and like getting so passionate about this that the organization brings you in to help tell these stories is really a true testament to organizations that recognize the importance of focusing on people's strengths. And as we bring in two more panelists here, speakers today, first one, John Kavanaugh. John, welcome.
Hi, John.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Your background is in leveraging strengths, and that was your entire that was your presentation that premiered today. I'd love to hear a little bit from you about like what it's like in organizations when they, or for leaders, when they actually make that big switch to focusing on people's strengths.
It's such an obvious thing to do, to bring out the best in people and find out what makes them tick. But yet, how often do we find that people are completely mismatched? They're, the best example that I can think of is that person who they're a great field clinician, they're great with the patients, and they're a reliable employee. So now let's make them a supervisor.
Mm.
And they've not necessarily shown leadership or ability to juggle handling a dozen different crews or anything like that. They're great bedside clinicians. Let's let them excel there. And someone had mentioned Gallup earlier, and definitely Gallup regularly comes out with the updates that highlight how much better, how much more money companies make, how much less turnover they have, better customer satisfaction scores, all that, when people are able to do the job that they're doing in a way that honors that core desire of them, and those things that just make them light up. And so, yeah, it's an obvious thing, but we need to be very intentional about seeking what it is that makes that person truly joyful, and then figuring out how we can use them in our organizations to let that shine.
And often we hear that there's not enough resources in an organization. Like maybe your organization isn't as big as a REMSA Health or Richmond Ambulance Authority. And I feel like leaders are often stopped by all the excuses for why it's not going to work. I can't even imagine having an expert storyteller in our midst because blank, budget, time. I can't imagine being able to comprehend actually having a coach or having to have conversations with people based on their strengths because of bandwidth. And our final guest in the green room I'm going to bring in is Isaac Sobel. Isaac hails from a very big system out of New York City and has helped organizations, and he's been seeing organizations around the country identify found money and revenue, which I think is so fascinating, that there are organizations out there, and correct me if I'm wrong, Isaac, that they're leaving money on the table because they're so focused on just trying to survive their organization, or they feel like they're in a scarcity mode.
Oh yeah. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Good to see you, Isaac.
It's good to see you too, Lisa. It's part of the big challenge is data, right? And a lack of good data in the hands of our leaders, because what we tend to do, and as I mentioned in my presentation, is as leaders, we tend to measure ourselves. How did we do last year? How did we do the year before? And if we've improved, so we say, okay, great, we pat ourselves on the back. But what if we're not measuring ourselves against the right data, right? We can't just look longitudinally over time and say, how did we do last year? How did we do the previous year? And are we doing better? But how are our peers doing? And working with folks like Revenue EMS, who have seen dozens and hundreds of portfolios, what we can do is give leaders the perspective that they need to really unlock their potential. And so, for me, being able to sort of shine a light on problem areas for leaders to be able to unlock the potential in their organizations by giving them the data and by going after money that is really just sitting there for the taking, is really, really meaningful.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Data and facts often overlooked, right? It is not a surprise that leaders are trying to do the best they can with the situations and the circumstances they are facing. And when they're not looking at the facts, or they don't have somebody that they can have look at the facts. I mean, it's so hard in echo chambers that we kind of get brought up in some organizations.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The through line that I'm kind of hearing here is, we're so trained and conditioned to focus on what's wrong, right? And then we get in the rut of that thinking. Fix what's wrong, stop the bleed, right, which you should do, right? But like that mentality, it's like to a hammer, everything's a nail. And so, to John's point, we don't even think of looking at strengths. It looks like a luxury to, or you're puffing somebody up. But the data actually shows that the quickest learning, the way to learn best is in your area of strengths, not in your area of weaknesses, right? And then going back to what Alexia was saying about bragging about yourself, right? We tend to have bragging as a negative thing, as opposed to seeing it as like, no, we're highlighting that what works. Why is it okay to focus on what's wrong, but it's not okay to highlight what works, right? So anyway, that was just sort of no question there. just noticing.
When Lexi was talking about their featured providers and the good things that they're doing, and just in the presentation, those are great opportunities to help nudge the improvements that we need, because so often, to Isaac's point, we can't do that. Well, here's proof that it can be done. Here's a provider that did it. Here's a mechanic that did it. Whatever the it is, being able to highlight the successes can really help to start to move the organization in that direction that you want, because here's that proof of concept. Way back in the day when we brought in the EPCR, we had some younger people who struggled with finishing their run sheet in the acceptable amount of time. And sure enough, we had an older, crusty, half disgruntled medic that worked for us. And by golly, he could get it done in 20 minutes. And that became our poster child, as proof of, hey, if
right.
Bob can do this, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
So there's opportunities for improvement in everything, and sometimes just looking at why things go right, why things go well, can help you establish that foundation for then moving it even farther forward.
And Robbie, earlier you were talking about turnover. And when we're talking about all these things, Alexia is mentioning pumping ourselves up to an external audience, but that also helps internally. That helps with your retention. When you have your employees see that they're being promoted for their good work, it also helps with the recruitment. That's a place I want to work. Look how they treat their employees. Look how they pump their employees up. Look at that environment. That makes me want to work there. And so this doesn't just work on a level as in terms of educating our stakeholders and our elected officials. This also works internally for the employees that we already have, and also as a recruitment tool. We have done some things with public relations that have attracted candidates, and that I was shocked to learn some of the things that we've done attracted candidates to apply here. But you find out after the fact, and you never know what you're doing, what impact it's going to have potentially for your organization.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I heard this story in the last week of somebody posed the idea, are we celebrating internally the folks that are picking up all this overtime in these shifts and they're working 80 hours a week? Or are we celebrating the person that's actually going on a vacation and disconnecting, or sharing a story of how they did some hike of the Adirondack Mountains, or they did some type of something that wasn't just focused on what we could end up with more of, right? What are we celebrating within the organization? Are we celebrating that balance that certainly is possible with the right organization, with the right budget, with the right leadership?
I think
that's such a great point.
It really is. I think it calls to mind two things. Robbie, a few minutes ago, you mentioned, we can't maybe afford to have a dedicated storyteller or somebody who's, committed in our organization to shifting the focus from weakness to strength or that sort of thing. But sometimes, as cliche as it sounds, I think we have to step back and go, can we afford not to have those things? We really need to make time and energy and find resources, both human and financial, to commit to telling that story, to building those external relationships, to celebrating our internal, wins, and making space for our employees to do that. And sometimes it's a combination. Or 2 years ago now, I think, or a year and a half ago, our organization implemented an internal communications platform, and there's all kinds of different employee experience platforms out there. So it's less about what you choose, but it has been such a joy to see our employees embrace that platform. And just exactly what you just said, they'll sometimes post pictures from their vacation or a great hike that they took, or the camaraderie that it creates when one of them shouts out a colleague for a difficult call, and then others can chime in and say, yeah, I responded on that as well, and you did everything you could. And it kind of creates these interactions that otherwise, we just wouldn't be able to kind of witness or give them a space for. And so I would really encourage whatever it is that we're looking at as an organization, and certainly we face it too, and we think, can we do that? Do we have the time or the bandwidth or the energy? And sometimes you have to find it, right? You have to just dig deep and find it to create those opportunities.
Absolutely. I love that.
And sometimes you have people in your organization that are already good at that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
There's how many people already are, have other specialties or other things that they're good at beyond their role in the organization or their official role. And so, but when you get curious about people's strengths and what brings people joy, back to John's point, right? Like, it may not be right within their job description, but it might be something they would be willing to contribute to the organization and to help out.
So I think for our public relations panel wrapping up, I so appreciate you putting together this presentation for our leaders to learn from and draw from your experiences. So maybe Mark and Alexia, you could just share some final thoughts here. Maybe what you've been most excited about at your organizations, give them a shout out to them, and what folks can maybe look forward to learning in your presentation.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that Rob kind of touched on it earlier. We've got to tell our story, or somebody else is going to do it for us, and we don't want that to be the case. And a lot of this it comes down to building relationships. One of the things you all mentioned before, that I came from a world as a television reporter into this position, and one of the biggest attributes of being a good reporter is building relationships, and that's absolutely the case in public relations. And that doesn't just mean building relationships with external audiences. That also means building relationships with people within your organization. We do a lot of great things at our agency. But a lot of the things that we do are ideas that our employees have come up with. And if you're not building those relationships within your organization, you're not going to get access to those ideas. One of the things I've made sure that I do is, if we can do something, I will work as hard as I can to make that happen. If we can't, I will try and do everything I can to communicate why this particular idea won't work at this time. And that's worked out great, because it's let all of our employees know that the door is open. No idea is going to get shut down. It may not come to fruition, but you will get a reason why it won't come to fruition. 2 weeks ago, we had an idea. It was an idea that was from an article in EMS 1 for supporting bystanders who may witness traumatic events but don't have access to resources. I had 2 different employees send me the same article, and then we ended up instituting a similar program at our agency, and we got great media coverage for it. So it was great because it let the employees know, we're listening to you. It was a great idea. So now let the community know, if you are a bystander and you experiencing something traumatic, we're going to have these resources available for you. It was just a great thing all around.
That's awesome.
Great example. Yeah. Mark, thanks again for being with us tonight, for sharing. And Alexia, final thoughts on what maybe you're most excited about at REMSA and through the presentation that you put together for our audience.
Sure. So I think it's kind of echoing Mark's thoughts. I think it's really important to commit to building those relationships internally and externally. And it's not just always going with an ask, but also being willing to hear from those folks that we're building relationships with, what it is that we can do for them, being willing to educate them, and to also learn from our audiences and stakeholders. I think that's really important. Sometimes, especially in the role of public relations, we can sometimes forget that communication and dialogue is a two-way process. And so to really be open to that, and Mark's examples about hearing from employees is a perfect way to think about that, and that there's a successful program in place now because he was willing to listen. So I think making sure that as you're building those relationships, that they're coming from a place of authenticity and a place of openness.
Oh, absolutely. Great advice for any leader to have curiosity and always be learning. I love that. So Mark, Alexia, thanks again for being here at our 5th annual EMS Leadership Summit and for all the work you did pulling that presentation together and for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for having us.
I appreciate it.
Congratulations on a great summit.
Thanks.
Oh,
Thanks.
thank you.
All right, Mark and Alexia, thanks for being here. And John, and your presentation isn't all about strengths. There's another half of your presentation, which we talked about, was like two sides of the same coin, is the idea of process improvement and continuous improvement, which is why I'd love to have a little conversation here with the two of you, because Isaac, your work is a lot about what are the small tweaks that we can make that are going to just give us some massive results. So John, can you talk a little bit about Kaizen and how maybe you came across this idea in your organization?
So on my end, I was doing QA/QI for a formerly large ambulance service that is now no longer in existence technically. But I don't remember how I came across Lean Six Sigma, but I did. And at the time, I could only find one other EMS provider in the entire nation that had anything attached with lean process improvement attached to his name. And he actually was a regional manager in our organization, and we didn't connect. So I was left to my own devices. And then when I worked at the hospital for 9 years or so, of course, the hospital systems are deeply, a lot of them are really connected with process improvements across the board. So the idea of continuous improvement, no matter how big or how small, was actually one of our employee annual review benchmarks. That they look to see how many Kaizen events we had submitted, and it could have been something simple as I organized my office, and this is what I did in it, and I think the one thing with it is it isn't always just I organized things or I cleaned out the closet. And this is what I did so it doesn't happen again, because it's easy to do a one-time thing, but if you keep returning to the problem over and over and over again, you've not addressed it. It's that stopping the bleed instead of just putting a Band-Aid on it. And so that really got me going now on the EMS side, bringing it back to the industry that I love. Of we can do so much of this just better, and it just takes that investment in some time, whether it's a 2-minute improvement or we're talking a major transformational thing. And to your point for Isaac, these are some of those things. How much of these data sets that we look at are bad data because people are putting I gave aspirin in the narrative instead of checking the box, and it's hard to run analytics off of free text box. And so to Isaac's point in his presentation, how much of our billing issues are because we're not filling out the PCR the way that it needs to be done to give our billers the ammunition that they need in the limited context that they have to convince a payer to fork over the money.
Oh yeah, I mean there's no question that 95% of the billing happens upstream, whether it's in the field data capture or in the intake process. And the pressure cooker in the billing office, from the chief or the CEO or whoever that's focused on, hey billers, how can we capture every dollar? The attention is directed there because it's easier to make changes in the billing. You have a small team, and you know, and hey, we hired you as a subject matter experts, but really that if you want to make lasting root cause improvements to the process that are really going to not just help with your billing, but really with you know, your overall functioning of your organization, you really have to push it upstream. And you know, it's important to think about too, you know, where are the limits of our strengths, and do we need to supplement our teams in certain areas where they're not so good, right? In certain areas, and whether it's, you know, on the billing side, maybe it's we do the upfront billing well, but you know, we're not good at the follow-up or something like that.
Yeah, that's so good. It's really important, and I love listening to both of you talk about these little hinges that swing big doors, right? I think people often come into situations and you know, I can remember way back in the day, Robbie, when you and I first started, and you talked about, you know, being frustrated with things not changing, and it's like, well, you can't eat the whole elephant all at once, right? And so keeping in mind that, you know, what is your focus, and what can you leverage, and how can you um, you know, what's the hinge that's going to swing the big door, right?
And I love that all of us are talking and pointing to the ability to look outside of our own industry to experts. That Isaac, you were never like on the provider side. You had a finance background. John, you brought outside industry information or a hospital method into our industry. I remember learning the idea of Kaizen and process improvement from the one of the leads at the Cleveland Clinic, and how simple they made these workshops for the frontline providers, because they said, look, the leaders don't have all the answers. The people on the front lines have all the answers. Let's bring them into the room and have a conversation, because they know all the pain points. They know all the wasted time and energy and movement and materials that are happening. Let's just elevate them a bit and let them have a voice in the whole process, which is why I love the Toyota Production Systems, the A3 process improvement, doing those workshops and getting people to put sticky notes all over the wall and figure out like what are all the pain points, and just pick one and reverse engineer it. Pick one and let's figure out how to tackle it and implement some new countermeasure or some new approach to it, and stop just doing more of the same.
Yeah,
I remember like 20. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it's a great leadership approach. One, you're connecting with your people by having conversation with them. But if you simply ask, what irks you about X? What is that pain point? What is that friction point for you to be able to do it more accurately, in a timely fashion, better, whatever the improvement is? What's keeping you from doing it? And then you close your mouth and you listen to them, and then there's that sticky note to say, oh, all we have to do is this one thing and it will make your job better. Well, heck, we can do that. We can find 5 minutes to put out an email and voila, problem solved. But it took someone asking the question to come up with the need.
Yes, so great. I was just going to say real quickly, I remember like 22 years ago, when I was first getting into organizational change work, and I was doing work in a very big trucking company, and they took on the policy of the person closest to the task was the expert on the task and would advise the supervisors in terms of how things should go. And you know, 22 years ago, I think it's still revolutionary to this day, but that made the leaders initially thought, oh, this is going to be terrible. But what they loved was it took the burden of having to know all the answers off of them. And that's something I've used in all my work with leaders, and when I, you know, work with teams and things like that, is you don't have to know all the answers. You need to know the right questions, right? How do you ask questions in such a way that it brings the expertise of your frontline, or the person closest to the task? They're the expert on that task. They're the expert on that whole thing. So as we're running out of time, these things go so fast, Robbie. I don't know how that happens. what advice would you like to give our audience, or maybe any, a call to action that might help people to kind of know where to look? Anything like that you'd like to share, John or Isaac?
Sure. I mean, sorry, John. I hope you don't mind if I go first. I think that the most critical ingredient in success in an organization is accountability, and that is something as leaders and as partners of the industry that we need to ensure is present. And that's why, in building my business, that is something that I've built into every layer of every process. And if you're not going to have accountability and skin in the game, your outcomes are just not going to be at the level that they need to be for an ambulance service, which is there to save lives. And so I think we really need to say, are we focusing to ensure that there is extreme ownership and accountability in everything that we do? Or do our partners have skin in the game, whether it's trying to, run a call or to collect every dollar, whether it's insurance underpayments or insurance follow-up or insurance billing, or making sure that the ambulance is clean and presentable. So I think accountability is the secret sauce of leadership. And I would humbly submit that anyways. And obviously I know you guys are the leadership experts, but that's what I've seen, that accountability is crucial.
And data and facts are essential. You can't hold someone accountable if you don't have data and facts.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just all thought created and not grounded in reality.
Absolutely.
John, please.
One more thing for Isaac. Isaac, give us the 30-second what is found money. If folks haven't watched your presentation, I really want people to understand that there is a whole term out there. There's a whole world of money that may be laying on the table. And I know you've helped other organizations come up with 5, 6, 7 figures worth of money that they could definitely use to invest in other areas of the organization. So give us the quick 30-second version, if you would.
Well, sure. Basically, found money is money that's been, found after being, lost, and you just realize, hey, I've got all this money. But the truth is that providers are sitting on found money in their data. Whether it's your Aetna claim where you billed $1,000 and they only paid $500, they adjusted the rest off as usual and customary. Why? And you've just written it off and you've moved on. But when you add that up times 1,000 claims over a period of up to 6 years, I mean, like you said, Robbie, it could be 6, it could be 7 figures. We're finalizing settlements now with multiple payers in the 7 figures. So found money is an opportunity for us to come in, to look at your portfolio, to benchmark you across the industry, and to tell you how much money can we find that's sitting there. We want to try and move the needle by at least 5% for folks in terms of moving their revenue by 5% from the baseline when we engage with folks. So, I appreciate the opportunity to tell folks it's money that it's yours. You've done the work for, and a simple call. Check us out, rvnuems.com. It could be a game changer. It could be a new ambulance. Could be new equipment. So it makes a real impact.
Love it. Thanks, Isaac. Again, bringing language to things that some leaders they don't know what they don't know sometimes. So appreciate you being here. And John, do you want to just give us your final thoughts here for our audience?
I'll echo Isaac. Accountability of bring your best self, bring out your people's best self, and continuous improvement it's holistic. It is that skin in the game of if you're an ambulance service and you aren't working directly with your billing service and asking the questions of why did we only get paid this amount of money? Why was this denied? If you aren't seeing what's going on with your different vendors and your politicians, and if you're just a bump on a log, you will just be a bump on a log. We need to be active. We need to be telling our stories. We need to be looking at how do we do what we do better, little Little improvement or big improvement.
Love it.
Robbie and Lisa, it takes 1,000 little things going right to run these processes, you know, and it's unless you've been doing this a long time, there are things that are slipping through the cracks.
Yeah, 100% agree. Love it. Isaac Sobel, John Kavanaugh, thanks again for being here with us tonight live. Thanks for putting, really pouring your knowledge into the presentations that you put together for our audience, folks. You still have until 8 a.m. Eastern, so about 13 hours to check out those presentations. Head on over to emsleadershipsummit.com/exhibit and click on booth number 1. You can see today's lineup of speakers. Isaac, John, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys. It's great to be with you.
What a fantastic.
How did that go by so fast?
I know. We are already, over our hour that we allotted. These things seem to always go a little bit longer, but they're great conversations. I mean, this is great advice from folks both inside our industry, outside our industry, and people who really care about our people and about helping leaders, focus on their most important asset, which is their people, because without them, we don't have organizations.
No, we have buildings with furniture in them.
And not great furniture.
Well, no, I was gonna say. Well, the other thing that I wanted to just say, Isaac was, so great in talking about, all this money that's bringing in, and how many people talk about we need to pay our people better, right? We need to, and we do, and we need to have benefits, and we need to have all these things, and found money. I mean, just being able to, you can buy a new ambulance, you can do a lot of things, but you can also create a people maintenance budget, right? Or you can increase salaries. Like, there's so many things that are possible. And to have someone with his expertise is speaking for us, and as a such a great service. So,
and folks, if you're asking yourself, what is a people maintenance budget? This is probably why you need one, right? It's not we all have budgets for equipment maintenance and stretcher maintenance and EKG defibrillator replacement plans and maintenance, but where's our people maintenance budget? Where are the budget lines that are taking care of our people? And I will tell you, they are not your payroll and your benefits package. They are beyond that. So
absolutely. We didn't talk about our presentation today. Our presentation was live today, and we really honed in on the cost of ineffective leadership, and I guess we alluded to it in our conversation tonight in the panel. But when you have leaders that are doing the best they can, often just innocently focusing on weaknesses, not maybe getting trained and how to bring out the best in people. I mean, how many times have we seen where people don't even get training until after they get the gold badge, and they got all these people around them that haven't, who are now damaged, and not damaged, but are hurt or feel ignored or whatever that is, and now you got to recoup.
Right.
Yeah. And so, there's a high cost to ineffective leadership. And we talk about that in the presentation, but we also share a strategy for shifting that, and in really how to look at things in a new way that really can have a huge impact on the culture of your organization or your team at whatever level of leadership you are.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the direct costs of turnover, which are quantifiable. We have the number in the formula, and it's important, I think, for every leader to dial in on what their turnover is costing them, both percentage-wise and monetarily each year, because it's into these 6 to 7 figures. It's astounding. And then there's the indirect costs, Lisa. We talk about the indirect costs of burning out our mid-level managers and our people that are constantly trying to just train the newest people and to get them to the either entry level. And often we don't, as leaders, get to focus on how do we go from novice to mastery. It's like we're just so trying to hold this ship together, and people are just doing the best they can with the resources they see and how the situation makes sense to them. So I'm looking forward to more people watching this presentation for the transformational component. So not just giving them more information, but having them see a new point of view. You and I agreed early on that all of our presentations would have some type of lasting component, lasting change. And that's what I love about the work that we get to do together. We get to have leaders actually participate and see something new for themselves. And like balance, like riding a bike, they'll never forget it.
Yeah, because if we have to rely on our memory on how to do something,
Right.
when it comes to like communication or leadership, it's like, what was step 3?
I
I
go to the
don't
kitchen and
remember.
I forget why I'm there. Right. It's not
Right.
going to work.
So really, all of our work and this presentation is no different, is really designed to shift your perspective so that you see life differently and live life differently. So with that said, let's go back to our sponsors. We really want to give a shout out and encourage people to go and be in the booths and get the free gifts and watch the videos and support our sponsors, because they are why we are able to do this for free.
I think Alexia mentioned they implemented a platform in their organization. And while I don't know what the platform was, she mentioned there's multiple ones out there. This one is fascinating.
Yes.
Scott Moore is one of our speakers that's been at our EMS Leadership Summit since day one. One of our originals. He's our early adopter, early supporter. Such a fantastic person that is out there to leverage both his EMS operation and leadership background, and also as an attorney and someone who has a specialty and a certification in human resource law. And he has designed a platform product for organizations called Newton 360 that draws information in from your EPCR system and your scheduling system and other data points so that it's usable information. Because without that, it's just a bunch of data out there. And making this, turning this data into information and turning that information into knowledge is what your supervisors are going to do to make sure that they're having conversations, especially as your workforce begins to scale. How do you make sure that people are checking in with people to make sure they're all right? They went through a tough call. They just worked a lot of overtime. Somebody's family member passed away, and did somebody even know about it, and who knew about it? So I think these are great tools out there, and we appreciate Scott for sharing his Newton 360 platform with our audience. And he's put a Calendly link together. I mean, he's so generous with his time, but he will take you through the power of Newton 360 in helping it accomplish, and not just creating a product for a problem that isn't there. He wants to know what situations and challenges you're facing to see if this is a right fit. But his passion just, he exudes passion for helping agencies, and we so appreciate Newton 360.
Yeah, he's been an EMT for like 30 something years too. He's actively so. I think the other one, other booth, if we have time to talk about, is the NAMI HP booth. Our friends over there and what they have to offer. You were just at their conference. You want to talk a little bit about that?
What a fantastic conference. I had not been to an in-person conference since before the pandemic. Now, we're all in on virtual. There's a time and a place, and I love our virtual experiences, both the summit and our curriculum, where we get to train people live from our studio. But getting to go out to the summit was hosted in Nashville, and they are in their third year, this association, the National Association of Mobile Integrated Health Professionals and community paramedics, leveraging social workers and nurses, and all of these innovators, people on like the bleeding edge, pardon the pun, of healthcare innovation. Like it was fantastic. I think they had over 80 or 90 speakers, and just so many different opportunities to highlight success that's happening in our industry, and how do we learn from those successes when it comes to community paramedicine, when it comes to mobile integrated healthcare. And they are highlighting their 12 steps to forming a successful MIH program. Their membership is ultra low. I think the agency membership is very reasonable as well, and you can become a member here. And Dr. Victoria Reinhardt is their interim executive director. She is so passionate as a pharmacist and somebody who's just a leader in the community paramedicine world. And she recorded a short interview with GEMS, and it's a great presentation to check out. We so appreciate NAMI HP and their partnership, and how innovative all the people I got to meet were. Like they could easily just try to keep doing more of the same. And a lot of people at that conference, like over 400 people, are really trying to make a difference, trying to make a career path for people in their organization, and reduce the upstream issues, or fix the more upstream problems of chronic healthcare utilizers to create a better environment for the downstream, the frontline providers.
Yeah, and I think the only other one we didn't talk about was CAMS.
Absolutely. CAMS, the Commission on Accreditation of Medical Transport Systems. We appreciate Dudley Smith and sharing about what it's like to go through an accreditation process in order to point to the not have to reinvent the whole wheel, I would say, right? Why reinvent the whole wheel when you have a roadmap? And they have been generous to share the program standards for MIH, Mobile Integrated Healthcare, community paramedicine programs. They've got their first edition standards, but they're looking at their second edition standards. So if you're passionate about this topic, they want to hear from you. Click on through, download the copy of the first standards. And if something doesn't make sense to you, you want to leverage some incremental change or take John Kavanaugh's advice here about continuous improvement, make some suggestions. That's the power of CAMS and them bringing together. And they really listen to everybody in our industry. And if you're a fixed wing, you're doing medical escort, you're doing rotor wing or ground and surface transport, there are standards and resources that you can access. And again, we appreciate CAMS and would encourage you to reach out if you're interested in hearing about the accreditation process.
Aren't these booths beautiful, people? Every time you click on one, I'm like, that is so cool. That is so
I
cool.
would like to highlight two fantastic organizations that have come together the last two summits, Citizen CPR Foundation and the Resuscitation Academy. And while my camera stopped working, you can still hear me, but
yes, we can.
They really put fantastic resources together. The 10 steps for improving sudden cardiac arrest survivability, different resources here you can download, and please check out those two organizations and the presentation that David Hiltz was so passionate about recording for that topic, along with Ann Dahl, Tom Ray, Dr. Jim Souza. We so appreciate them continuing to support the EMS Leadership Summit and help really organizations and leaders with pathways to help improve survivability and save more lives.
Yeah, and that's what EMTs and paramedics are all interested in, right? In saving lives. And I know I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I continue to be moved and inspired by our sponsors and how much they're willing to share these free resources. They're just incredible. And I highly, highly recommend that you just go in and check it out. You can do it with or without, registering. You just go check it out. You go to EMS Leadership Summit /exhibit. .com/exhibit, and it'll bring up the exhibit hall, and you can just have yourself a good old time going through, watching the videos, getting the information, and enhancing your learning along the way.
Absolutely.
Oh yes, tomorrow's schedule. Woohoo!
So we have a full day lineup. We added the Dr. Nadine Levick's presentation. She'll be live from Israel, streaming on. I'm sorry, I'm on day number 5.
Oh, you're on the wrong day.
Just to let you know, folks, we'll switch back to day 4 here momentarily. But Dr. Nadine Levick has been added her session to the playbook. So use your existing playbook link at emsleadershipsummit.com/playbook, and you can see the lineup for the rest of the week, because it's not over. We're only halfway there. And folks, you can still upgrade for an all access pass as well. If you missed a session or you want lifetime access to all these amazing speakers for less than $100, it's really a steal. So day number 4, that I'm on the right day. It's tomorrow.
Yeah.
First up is Ray Bereshansky. And if anyone has had a chance to listen to Ray Bereshansky talk, he leverages his experience as both a paramedic early on in his career to a lifelong career in public service, working in the world of public health, the former Deputy Secretary of Public Health for the state of Pennsylvania, being in public health positions in Connecticut. And he does such a fantastic job talking about emotional intelligence, which is a topic I love. I love to learn about it. I've studied under some great folks and professors that have been studying the world of emotional intelligence. And he talks about harnessing this for tools in being a leader in a leadership position. And Ray does a great job breaking down the basics of emotional intelligence, because it's way beyond, IQ has its place, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And if somebody can improve their emotional intelligence, their emotional self-control, their self-awareness, their relationship building, their that presentation was so well done, and as many presentations that I've seen him put on and talk about emotional intelligence.
Next
Corey
is Corey.
We love
Yeah.
Corey, and is the battalion chief of Fairfax County Fire Rescue Department. And he, remember from the days of him being a captain with that very large department, talking about what their system is doing, and he continues to innovate. Him and another team member are really talking about a fire-based EMS system, and giving folks more information to compare. If you're a fire-based system, this is a really good department to look at, and how they've approached training and reinventing their training process, and how they're adapting to a changing workforce.
Yeah, and how they're actually drawing in more ALS and providers because of the shift that they've had. It's a really fascinating conversation that he has about how things have changed at his organization, and he's just a terrific guy. And then we have go
Mick
ahead.
Gunderson, Mick Gunderson, who is the
Yeah.
the International Journal of Paramedicine, as well as an expert in the world of continuous improvement, as he has served with different organizations. And if you are interested in continuous improvement and looking at data, Mick has a little masterclass that he's boiled down into this presentation about process variation, continuous improvement. And we so appreciate Mick and the Cambridge Consulting Group for their work in the world of helping organizations on a path of continuous improvement.
I remember, I think it was last summit, interviewing him, and he was sharing about a whole nother approach to quality. And I felt like the whole time my mouth was just open. I was like awed by how much he knew and how he had taken this whole thing that a lot of times when people hear quality, QA or QI and QM, QA, sorry, and how people are like, "Well, not that again." And he had this incredibly exciting approach to it, and this year is no exception. I mean, his conversation, and like you said, it's a masterclass. It's fantastic.
And Dr. Candace McDonald, who is now the executive director at the National Volunteer Fire Council, her PhD work was actually focused on looking at successes in our industry and how organizations are succeeding in the volunteer fire and EMS services. And she put a packed presentation together with, I have like 2 pages of notes alone on what Candace has put together. And any organization that is embracing volunteers in the organization, or they're augmenting their schedule, or they're providing opportunities, maybe they have a full-time career schedule and have an opportunity for people to gain volunteer experience. He's brought in the research behind what people and organizations want. And you and I have talked about this for years. It's so funny. During the whole presentation, I kept going back and drawing some parallels and stories to things that we've heard when things are firing on all cylinders, when they're really working well. And Candace kept pointing back to, that's what the research is showing. That's why that happened. It was a fun, interactive presentation, and there were many stories. And I know people have written in with some of their biggest challenges. They've looked at our emails, and we've asked them to share some of their biggest challenges. And some folks that are in very rural areas, or that are relying on volunteers. So I've been definitely highly recommending that to many of the folks that have been writing in.
Yeah, definitely. And then we have Wendy and Scott, 2 different presentations, but Wendy has been actually with us since 2019. I believe Scott started with us in 2020, but I could be wrong about that. But my conversation with Wendy about quiet quitting to quiet thriving, a conversation about culture, competence, and complacency. And again, a really research-based conversation, because Wendy loves research, and can't say enough about Wendy. Teaching for over 25 years in the paramedic school, very science-based. She was, a nurse, and realizing that um, they weren't preparing paramedics for the experiences they were going to have, the potential for trauma. And while they were helping the paramedics to help others, they weren't helping the paramedics to help themselves. So she went to school, got a master's in mindfulness, and she's just a wealth of information. And I highly recommend this presentation because she gives some great ideas about how to address these issues um, in really meaningful ways. You're muted, Robbie.
I think I'd have that down by now. But last but not least,
I know.
Fantastic leader, so passionate about helping our industry, and he will just do anything for people when it comes to talking about how to create a better leadership experience for everyone. And we certainly love his passion because it just shines through when he starts talking about drawing on both his experiences, but also as a consultant with the American Ambulance Association and working on national stages, seeing coast to coast what organizations are dealing with, and just drawing from that human resource expertise. I think it's such an interesting intersection of knowledge that Scott brings, and passion. He's just so excited about helping organizations.
Yeah, and Scott's going to be with us tomorrow for our daily debrief, and I believe Wendy is definitely confirmed as well, and hopefully Corey and Candace will be able to join us, and Mick will be with us too. So
Great.
stay tuned for tomorrow night for another exciting daily debrief. After viewing as many sessions as you can, come and ask your questions because our panelists love to answer questions.
And folks, that does it for today's daily debrief. We so appreciate you, what you're doing in your community, how, if you're watching this, how passionate you are for this topic. We invite you to go to our exhibitor hall, emsleadershipsummit.com/exhibit. You can download the PDF playbook of sessions and see what's happening the rest of the week, what's happening on day 5. We'll be here live at 6 p.m. Eastern time every night this week. And make sure you enter the grand prize drawing thanks to the Before Operational Stress team, and enter the grand prize drawing for the giveaway. That is going to happen on Saturday's daily debrief. So,
and don't forget Saturday, 7:30 Eastern, we are going to be do our second showing of Honorable But Broken, EMS in Crisis. I highly recommend that not only you come, but that you send emails out to people. All of the ticket proceeds, the entire $15 for the ticket, goes to the charity that supports this documentary. And it's so important that we get this message out. So whether somebody's in EMS or not, invite them to come get their popcorn, and from the comfort of their own,
right?
That's right, from the comfort of their own home or office, and watch this incredibly impactful film.
Yeah, certainly exciting. And what you can watch the trailer if you're not sure. So folks, this has been a great time. Lisa, thank you so much. Great conversations tonight with all of our expert panels. I mean, I feel so honored and privileged to have created this platform with you and help elevate these voices that people, so many advocates are just so passionate about improving our industry. So
absolutely. I feel the same way about you, and feel so lucky to be a part of all this. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Have a great evening, and we'll see you real soon.
Bye, everyone.